Hello and welcome back to Matt Hayes' Tottenham Blog and to a show this evening that I'm very, very excited for. I'm joined by the legend, the Juventus fan Giuseppe, to talk all things Antonio Conte and Fabio Paratici as we look back at their time at Juventus and what they could bring into Tottenham Hotspur Football Club. But before I get started, Giuseppe, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you getting on?
It's a real pleasure and honor to be on actually another channel, because I'm invited a lot of time, but it's really Juventus based. And this time I can go somewhere else, not even in Italy, but I feel, because I was traveling a lot to UK, to London and so on, and I was missing it. And thanks to you, you gave me actually the feeling that I'm there. So thank you, Matt.
I love it. Thank you for coming on, especially. It's good to know you're looking forward to this. Let's just welcome a few people into the chat. We got Ryan, Little Big Man, the legend. We got Alexander Hilton, Kane the long shot, and we've George as well. Says Forza Beppe, convert some Tottenham fans into Juve fans. Well, look, if that's the goal for tonight, let's hope it happens. I still want to mention on a personal front, we're hoping tonight's show will get us over 2 million views on the channel, which is a crazy milestone that I never thought I'd hit. So please, everyone, do smash that like button, because every like will help get extra views in here, and hopefully we can hit that milestone tonight. But without further ado, let's get into what is bound to be a very, very exciting conversation about Conte and Paratici. And what we're going to do to start off with is go back to what maybe wasn't a very good time in Juventus' history, and kind of offer a little bit of context into what these two men were walking into when they came into Juventus, and that is with regards to the Calciopoli scandal back in 2006, when Juventus were put to the bottom of the Serie A and eventually relegated to the Serie B. I think just starting in there, a very important point in all that is the loyalty that we saw from a lot of Juventus players, with likes of Del Piero, Buffon, Trezeguet, Paolo Nedved, staying with Juventus and being able to get you back up into the Serie A very quickly. But even then, when you did get back up there was a lot of managers, a lot of poor place finishes. But I suppose what I want to know is, what was the general feeling around the club and the mood with regards to that whole scandal?
It was a big hit. It was a really big hit, a big surprise as well, because in 2005, 2006, you win the Scudetto, you lift it up in the air, you have all the images on Google, internet, then you go to the World Cup, and suddenly you have that mixed feeling, because we as Italian fans and Juventus fans, we were super happy that Italy was winning game after game after game in the World Cup. But on the other hand, we were living that kind of joke for us as supporters, because there was a big scandal, and we know Italy is the country of controversies and these kind of things. We were a bit used to it, but more the days were going, more the affair Calciopoli started to be bigger and bigger and bigger. So it was a really bittersweet moment for all the fans of us, and we were sent in Serie B. I don't want to go through all the details, because I'm sure Tottenham fans do not care about all the history. The only thing I want to add on that is, if you go back in time, in why Calciopoli and so on, until today, we are in 2021, no match fixing has been found at today. So, it's a big affair. And, if people want to investigate, if you are really interested, you can. But anyway, we were sent, according to me, but I'm a Juve fan, not correctly, to Serie B. It was a big hit for Juventus. Why? Because if you have players like Thuram, Zambrotta, Ibrahimovic, Emerson, Cannavaro, all these big players that are leaving, of course, some had to leave, because if you are going in second division, that makes that you are losing a lot of money. You are going in second division, a lot of players are leaving. And Ibrahimovic, that was a rising star at the moment, he came from Ajax, he played 2 years with us, he had no affinity with the club. So it makes totally sense. Then, of course, seeing him going to our rivals, Inter, it's a big hit. You go into Serie B, where you don't know what to expect. It's really strange, because we never went there. You go there with also minus X points, so it would be really hard. And you don't know if one day you will see your club again winning. And that's a big question mark. And I believe that at that time, nobody knew what would have been expected from Juventus. I love the story of Pavel Nedved, that had so many offers from big teams, Del Piero to Manchester United, to Real Madrid. Alex Ferguson called Del Piero saying, you have to join us, He said, a gentleman never leaves his old lady. Nedved, for example, was about to leave, and Nedved said, he was speaking with his wife, and the wife said, look at what Juventus did for you so much, and they make you who you really are today. If you leave her, what will happen? What will happen with Juventus? We don't know. Maybe never be reaching the top again. And these players, we have to be forever grateful for them because they were loyal. They stayed, but Juventus come back in Serie A after winning it. We smashed Serie B. We come back, and to be honest, we didn't struggle that much in terms of position, because the first year that we go up, we finished third in 2007, 2008. And the year after, we finished second. So people might think, okay, Juventus is back. Juventus just had 1 year, but it's true that a lot of problems of Juventus were covered in these years. Because how did we finish third and second? It was not because we were a great team. Just to tell you some names, we had players like Palladino, Paro, we had Zebina, Marchioni, Grigera, Almiron, these kind of players that would probably never make a team like Juventus today. They come to us, we are winning. How? With grinta. That's an Italian famous word that means grit, the will, the energy to do something, to show we are Juventus and we deserve to be there. But if you really actually see the teams and the players' way of playing, the coaches, probably, we covered a lot of problems. And at a certain moment, covering is beautiful, but at a certain moment, you will be on the spotlight. And that's where we finished 2 times seventh. In 2009 and 2010, we finished 2 times second with a lot of change in coaches and so on. A lot of players going away, coming in. We find no solution. Big drama for Juventus, where at a certain moment, it's really hard. It's really hard because it's a new reality where we were not used to it. As second division, a lot of fans, they were even some Juventus fans are even proud of the second division today. We were sent not because we were relegated, because of a scandal. We go there, we win it, we are back, we are third, we are second, we do some beautiful games. But the 2 7th places in a row, these ones were really hitting hard, especially because a lot of players left. You didn't have really the material of Juve. Coaches also, the new management was really bad. And that's where you say, what will happen with my beloved Juventus? And that's where we arrive at May 2010.
I love that. What a fantastic build-up that is. And just looking at, you mentioned the different managers that you had at the club. There's Claudio Ranieri came in when he first got promoted. He had Ciro Ferrara, Alberto Zaccaroni, and Luigi Del Neri. And so Fabio Paratici comes into the situation in between your 2 7th place finishes. So his first season at the club, he finished 7th. And I suppose what he mainly was tasked with, I know he eventually went on to be an extremely successful man, but would you say from a Juve perspective, it was bringing stability back to the club and a bit of, I suppose, making you stable is probably the best way I can put it. Would you say that was the initial task at hand for him?
Well, there is a big difference. Sampdoria was doing really well that year because, if I'm not wrong, they even finished in Champions League qualification. They were doing wonders, but there is one thing I want to mention also for all the Tottenham fans that they really understand. We didn't go to Sampdoria to take Paratici. We went there to take Marotta together with Paratici. And that will be really important when I will explain the story of Paratici at Juventus, because it's a successful story. But why did he succeed? And probably why did he had some problems at Juventus after? But I think it was more the duo that we have to see. Paratici and Marotta. They went to Juve. Stability, it's really a difficult, I don't know if it's a right choice, because when you are 7th, you are not looking for stability. You are looking for a new way to get out of this kind of 7th position. Now, if I may say, and that's what I believe, you have a difference between a coach and sportive directors. While a coach can do an instant difference in a team, sportive director or a new management, they come in and they can't do an immediate change. It's impossible because you need to understand the club. You have to be there in the culture. You have to understand also the finance of the club. You also have to start all the contacts with the players. Probably you already have because that's your job. But going into a reality of Juventus from Sampdoria, it's totally something else. So you need at least, I believe, one season before starting to see. Also because as a sportive director, you're also a consequence of the previous management. And that's hard because, of course, if you have, I don't know, 12 players that were just extended the year before, you can do whatever you want. You are stuck with these players. So stability, I don't know, but a strategy, middle term, not even long, but a middle term strategy to go out of that position, to bring back Juventus, to win in a 5-year plan. Because these were the words of President Agnelli that was there. He said, it's a 5-year plans to win against Serie A.
And look, that's a fantastic insight into what Paratici was kind of coming into and where he was coming from. And I do feel that context is so important to Tottenham, because we've had a difficult couple of years, nowhere near the struggles that Juventus had, but 2.5 years ago in the Champions League final to right now being in the Conference League and kind of struggling to hit the level that we've had. And we've had the inconsistencies with managers. We've had Jose, who ultimately was a failure. We then had Ryan Mason, Nuno Espirito Santo, who lasted 4 months, and we've ended up here with Antonio Conte, which is kind of similar, I suppose, to it when Paratici was at Juventus. He had a different manager at first and then managed to bring Antonio Conte in. And I suppose at the time, Conte had, of course, managerial jobs before. They weren't the most successful. He had a spell, for example, at Atalanta, which only lasted 14 games, which wasn't I'm sure something he'd look back at fondly, I'm sure. But in that first transfer window, he was backed and he brought in a lot of players. Let's have a list here, just for context for the Spurs fans. We have Andrea Pirlo, Reto Ziegler, Michel Pazienza, Marco Motta, Simone Pepe, Fabio Quagliarella, Alessandro Matri, Stefan Lichtsteiner, Arturo Vidal, Mirko Vucinic, Emmanuel Giaccherini, Elherio Elia, and Simone Padone. All brought in that first transfer window, a very busy one. Interestingly as well, Iago Falque actually left Juventus to go to Tottenham that summer. But I suppose from the get-go there was a lot of trust shown in Antonio Conte.
Well, the story behind Conte to Juve, I will probably disappoint you, but it was not Paratici and not Marotta that chose Antonio Conte, but it was President Agnelli. How did they do, if you wanted the inside jobs? It's because they were on some trainers. They were about to choose some trainers, and then last minute there was really Antonio Conte that went to the house of Andrea Agnelli. It's also written in some books, and so he goes there. They have a discussion. And that's where Antonio Conte really convinced last minute Andrea Agnelli, the president, to choose and to go for him because he had no experience. As you said, he trained some second division teams like Bari and so on. He had a few experience at Atalanta that didn't go well. But he was able, thanks to his charisma, thanks to his motivation, thanks to his Juventinità, because he was captain of Juve. He understood the moment we were in. He was able to convince the president. So this one, the choice of Conte at Juve was not on Paratici. Now it will be his choice on at Tottenham, but at the time it was not.
That's interesting, and it's something I actually genuinely didn't know. I thought it was Paratici who would have selected Conte way back then, but it was a match made in heaven that Agnelli is certainly happy looking back on, that he managed to pick out. And look, just looking at the face of Antonio Conte's 3 years at Juventus, he won the league every season, including his first season he was unbeaten, and his third season there he finished with over 100 points, which is an incredible achievement, conceding only 23 goals that season as well, really bringing in that proper Italian defensive resilience that I know ES football fans do love. But one thing that we were just speaking a bit there before, I would look at Conte's time at Juventus and immediately think 3-5-2 success with Asamoah and Lichtsteiner as your fullbacks and the likes of Marchisio and Pirlo in the middle of the park. But you were telling me it wasn't as straightforward as that.
No, actually, Conte was always known to be a 4-2-4 manager before that time. Offensive manager, but playing a 4-2-4, using the wings a lot. And actually, he started at Juve with a 4-4-2. Now, you mentioned a really important name. You mentioned Pirlo. Pirlo was not the player that Conte chose, but it was Paratici and Marotta that chose him. And he was stuck with him because he was signed before the appointment of Antonio Conte. Conte was not looking for a player like that. he was stuck with him. But then from the first training sessions, he really understood that Pirlo is Pirlo. Pirlo came from a really bad season at Milan. A lot of Milan fans were thinking that he was a finished player. He came from some injuries. He was not consistent anymore. And he understood that this is a player he has to play. And what I was speaking with you offline was that Conte goes in the first game of the season with a real 4-4-2, really basic. 4-4-2 that offensively become a 4-2-4. And then he changed really quickly to a 4-2-3-1, going in the 4-1-4-1 versus Milan, one of the most important games of that era, because, and then we can speak about the motivational aspect of Conte, but purely tactic, he changed a lot to actually understand in the 11th game of the season versus Napoli, a really important game, that he could have tried a 3-5-2. We had at the time 3 big defenders, Bonucci, Barzagli, and Chiellini, the BBC, well known. These 3 players, they were not playing together. Just another inside information. Before the start of the season, Conte goes to Bonucci and he says, "You are not the starter. You are my last choice. It's even better if you leave."
Wow.
He came. Yeah, he just came. That was one of the first signings, by the way, from Bari of Paratici the year before, Bonucci. And Bonucci was about to leave. And then he thought about it and he had that sense of revenge. And that's what he did. He stayed there. And thanks actually to perseverance, he convinced Conte to try the three men in the back, with Pirlo as a defensive midfielder that was building from the back as well. And that's how the 3-5-2 legend of Conte started, because of the man, and because he was a smart man that is really, really strict on some things, but tactically he changed a lot to adapt to the players he had.
Mm-hmm. That's such a key point, and it's again something I mentioned to you before with regards to, right now with Tottenham we're playing this 3-4-3. I know we're only a couple of games into his time, but we're playing that 3-4-3, and how I look at it is we can't at the moment really adapt to a 3-5-2 because we're lacking the consistency in our ball playing midfielders. Even Ndombele is, he's on and off Lo Celso with his injuries and just not really showing the form he shows nationally. We kind of have to play Højbjerg and Skip in there, and what we're lacking is, I know we're not going to end up with a player of the caliber of Andrea Pirlo, but someone of a similar style who can be that deep line playmaker. And it's just so interesting to see that Conte did tinker with his formations at Juventus, as we know he did at Chelsea as well. And hopefully that is how he will find the best system for him at Tottenham. But another thing we were talking about was the importance of the fullbacks, and you pointed out the importance of midfielders within the utilization of getting the fullbacks on the ball for Juventus as well.
No, absolutely. These are really, really important. And actually, the idea already come with, if you think of 4-2-4, why? Because he loves to have wide players. That's the idea of Conte. Why? Because he loves to make sure to use all the field, and to actually open the defense of the opponents. And playing with a 4-2-4 originally really created that with the 2 men offensively, the 2 left and right midfielders that are going back to form again that 4-4-2. If he plays a 3-5-2, he's really relying on the 2 men on the left and on the right. The fullbacks are super important, but you really need some people that loves to run, that have that energy, that are really not tired, like a Lichtsteiner. Lichtsteiner for me was one of the icons of that Conte's Juve, because he was a guy that was running for 90 minutes. You can love or hate the guy, but he was really a key in this season. Asamoah came then the year after to complete it on the left. But these are crucial for Conte. So I don't know at Tottenham who will be able to do these kind of roles, but they are really crucial for the game he wants to play.
Yeah, I think Tottenham fans are looking at someone like Sergio Reguilon out in that left-hand side, who had a difficult first season last year, who can really push on. And I think even Fabrizio Romano said that he can see Reguilon becoming one of the best left-backs in the world in that style. And I hope it happens. I think the typical Tottenham reaction is to be a bit tentative and say, well, things still can go wrong. But I think he does have the attributes to be that player for us. And if he can become even half of the player that Lichtsteiner was, I think we're on a good path there to having a very talented player. But look, outside of tactics and style of play and all that, something about Conte's managerial style that he's well known for is the passion and the vigor, and you could probably bring in that word grinta that you brought up a minute ago. And Andrea Pirlo, his autobiography, he actually spoke quite a bit about Antonio Conte, and he mentioned the very first meeting between Conte and the players. He brought him into the gym at the training ground, and he basically told them last season was useless. I think the words he used were absolutely appalling. The performance, finishing in 7th, and he said, "I'm not here for that." And like from minute one, he really shook that squad to the core. How important do you think that was and continues to be with the trajectory of Juventus as a football club?
But you have two factors. One that I think it's really important to mention is the opening of the Juventus stadium, because they're still speaking about it 10 years later. We opened 10 years later. We opened with the arrival of Conte, our stadium, with a big ceremony where you had so many legends of the club. You had really that history of the club, and all the players were really impressed and amazed by what was going on. Having our own stadium, the first club, and it's still the only club in Italy to have an own stadium. It's not like in UK where you have all the clubs are owners. In Italy they hire. So it was really a sense of belonging somewhere, and we can't do again what we did in the last 2 years. It's a shame for a club like Juventus finished 7th, and especially 2 years in a row. So that was a really important factor. And then for me, the second one is Conte. Conte that arrives, and he understood immediately which word he needed to use, because he lived in the locker rooms of Juventus. He understood what it was in 2002 to win unbelievable trophy, Italian league at the last day versus Inter. He understood really what it was. He perfectly knew also the culture. He knew that Juventus was a team that was attacked from left, from right, from everywhere. And there was also, after we came back from second division, a lot of media and other clubs were mocking Juventus also, because they were saying, now they are sympathetic. Do you say sympathetic? They are friendly, smiling.
Oh, yeah. No, yeah.
We love now. We not love them. That's a big word, but we have affection for them now, because of course Juventus was not winning anymore. And he said immediately, we don't care about the others. We are surrounded by enemies, and we have to prove every single day. He's one that goes and buy the sportive papers every day. He cut articles from it, and he put it on the locker room, on the doors, saying, look what they said about us. They can't say, we have to show on the field that the papers, they can't speak bad about Juventus. We don't have to give them food for thoughts. And when you are starting to speak things like that, it's beautiful. Also, the fact that he took some bottle of waters in the locker room, and that's a great story. Juventus Parma, first game of the season, okay, in our stadium, sunny weather, beautiful. The Juventus come from 2 times 7 in a row, and don't forget that. Juventus is playing amazingly well. They are winning. Halftime, they go into the locker room. All the players are super happy, smiling, because what Juventus did in these 45 minutes was incredible in terms of performance, the atmosphere, the stadium, all singing, chanting, supported the team. It was a perfect day. And they were all smiling and happy at halftime, and he was pissed off. He was pissed off, and he said, it's not enough. It's not enough. It's not good enough. And he was actually so pissed off and angry at his face, but it was true. He was not faking. That the players understood, like, what we are doing is not enough. At the end of the game, we are winning 4-0. Then we concede a penalty. It's 4-1 with Giovinco. He was still not happy. He was pissed off because we conceded that penalty in the last minutes where we were already winning 4-0. That gives the mentality of Conte in that first year, in understanding which words to use. And he had great things, but also bad things. You mentioned Reto Ziegler. It was funny that you mentioned that name, because Reto Ziegler was bought by Marotta and Paratici when he was at Sampdoria. He was a great fullback. We bought him, and he was sure to be a starter. And during the first training sessions at Juventus, because he didn't play any official game with Juve, he's training there, and Conte goes to him and he said, Ziegler, or no, he didn't even name him because he didn't know his name. He said, you are in competition with Paolo De Sceglie. Paolo De Sceglie is not a big star of Juventus. It's not Lichtsteiner. Probably a lot of you do not even know Paolo De Sceglie. While Ziegler, he goes to Marotta at the time in the evening. He said, I was bought on a free transfer. I come to Juve because I was meant to be a starter. And the guy is crazy. He just came to me saying me that I will be in competition with an unknown young player. And Marotta, he goes to Conte. He said, hey, Conte, you have to be a bit, chill. The guy just arrived. He's in a new club. We promised him this and that. And Reto Ziegler never played with Juve. Since that day, he never played a minute with Juve because Conte said, oh, you are going behind my back to complain while I'm the trainer. And the story of Reto Ziegler was over with Juventus. So it's really harsh on something. And this is really important for Tottenham players. Listen to what he's saying. Respect him, because if you want to do your law, whoever you are, you will not see the field anymore.
I love that so much. He did that first part about the halftime against Parma and how he's just never happy. It reminds me of Pep Guardiola. The way you can see City winning 5-6-0, and he said, "We screaming at Sterling or screaming at Foden to do a little bit better." And that's the mentality that we need at the club that has been lacking that for, God, you could argue 40, 50, 60 years, but that story of Ziegler is absolutely incredible. And I'm sure there's a few players at Tottenham that the fans would like to see that happen too. But just even on that point at the halftime, Pirlo in his autobiography as well mentioned those halftime tirades that even when Juventus were winning, he wasn't happy and he wanted more. And he used the phrase as well, allergic to error, which is exactly what we need, because with an error-prone side, the Tottenham have become, it's such a good trait for the manager to have. And it was.
If I can add another one. And that's, the negative side of his obsession of winning. Even if you know that his daughter is called Victoria, that means winning. You know that? I don't know if you know that.
Yeah, I think he said it last week. Yeah, it's incredible.
But the story I wanted to explain is that the second season, when you mentioned as well that we had the record points in Serie A, 102 points, it's amazing. But we are in a Europa League at that time, and we are playing a semi-final versus I think it's Benfica. I'm not even sure. I think it's Benfica. We are playing there, and we already won nearly the Scudetto the second year because we were sure nearly mathematically to win it. And instead of rotating his team in first division Italian team to play his best team in Europa League, he was so obsessed with victory. He was so obsessed with having the record of 102 points that he played his best man in an unimportant, absolutely not important game in the league. What actually made that the players were tired and so on, and they lost in the semi-final of Europa League. And these are the dangers with Conte, of his stubbornness that sometimes, and I hope he learned, because we are speaking about 2012 back then. But I think, these kind of things are really big mistakes of Antonio Conte.
Yeah, look, I think that's definitely something we have to be wary of, because, Spurs at the moment, we're in the Conference League. It's not the most prestigious trophy, but as a team that hasn't won a trophy in 13 years, some fans are hoping we'll go and push for that. And if Conte can find the right balance between trying to maybe get back in the top four in the Premier League and winning trophies elsewhere, our squad isn't deep enough for them to play every single game like that. So that's an important point, and one that I'm sure will strike a bit of fear into Spurs fans. But look, aside from the domestic success that Conte had at Juventus, which is can't be denied, he did struggle a little bit in Europe. Like you mentioned there, you're in the Europa League despite the how well you were doing domestically, and he did then leave in 2014, and he cited financial disagreements, I suppose, with the board as the reason for the departure. I think there's a quote there where he said something like, "You can't go to a €100 restaurant and eat with €10," and you're looking then that's the same reason he left it into Milan. I suppose just quickly, what was the feeling around the fan base, I suppose, when Conte moved on?
Look, before he joining Inter, I had really a big link with Conte, because he's the guy that brought us back to win after 2 times 7 in a row. And I don't believe that someone else could have made that impact. So I will be forever grateful for what he did as a player, but especially as a coach with Juventus. I started to dislike Conte a bit I started to dislike Conte a bit from the second season on, when he started to speak in front of the microphones and was started to complain about nothing, because Juventus was winning and winning great and beautiful. Look, I told you, and I did it on purpose, I told you that Juventus had a mid long term to go back to win the Serie A. It was a 5-year plan. 5-year plan.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is that thanks to the stadium, thanks to Conte, thanks to a magical, perfect year, you know, when all the stars are aligning right, you win in the first year. No, I'm sorry. The plan was 3 years to go back to compete, 3 years to come back to compete in Serie A, and 5 years to be again a team that is important in Europe. That was the plan.
Okay.
3 and 5 years. He did it in 1 year, but it's not because you overachieved that all the strategy of the club can suddenly change. The finance, it's not because you win 1 year immediately that the finance change from day to night. It's impossible. So if the plan is 3 years, it's 3 years where you will be able again to buy big names. And he started already to complain at the middle of the second year where everything was going well. And he was complaining openly and publicly, and me as a fan listening to it, I was like, I don't like that. Why bringing up these kind of negativities? First one, because everything is going good, and two, if you are a manager, go and speak with the management. If you're a coach, you go and you speak privately with that. He was complaining about especially transfer market because he wanted more players, because he was complaining that we sold, who did we sell? We sold Matri, for example, and then we bought Tevez. You can't complain because you don't have Matri anymore if the team buys you Tevez, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But you can't have all the players. So the reason why he left was he was in disagreement with not respecting anymore the plan he signed for. If you sign for a plan of 3 and 5 years, 3 to be competitive in Italy with players, 5 to go and to have more important European players that have a big name, you can slightly adapt the plan and you can have other expectations. I understand, but you can't change everything. And he was not happy with that. He wanted to go faster. He also wants some player like Iturbe from Roma that got lost immediately. You know, sometimes he has these kind of strange names that he wants, and he wanted Quadrado, for example, that at the end came at Juve, but I believe that Juventus bought him right after Conte just to show him, like, you know, you wanted that guy, now we will buy him, you know. But that's why Conte left, because he was in disagreement with not respecting the plan that was showed him in the beginning and that he signed for. And the second thing is because I believe also Juventus is a club that is quite paying attention how they communicate to the exterior, to the public. Mm-hmm. And they don't like that own employees, because he was an employee, gives a bad image of management publicly.
Yeah, that again is so interesting. And look, I think Tottenham fans again will have similar concerns to what is cropping up there, because Daniel Levy can make all the promises in the world, and even King Hoddle is asking it here. You know, there is that chance that Conte will be in a similar situation, because it happened 5 months ago at Inter Milan. There was discrepancies there over finances, and I know the Zhang family, who do own Inter Milan, have their own personal financial issues. Their own Chinese team, Jiangsu Suning, went into liquidation about 18 months ago after winning the Chinese Super League. So there are a lot of kind of behind the scenes factors there. But he thought, look, if I'm not getting what I want, and I would argue to some extent that with the success he's had since then, maybe he should have gotten a bit more if it was possible. But there's that fear that something similar will happen at Tottenham.
If I can tell you something, is enjoy every single bit of Conte as long as you can. Mm-hmm. But don't fall in love with him, because at a certain moment he will just say ciao. He will leave, because that's the big thing that you have to understand with Conte, and it's better if you understand it sooner than later, is he has no affection for the club he's working for. he has one affection, and it is himself. He loves himself, and he's going for his personal records. Then the team he's managing at that moment will benefit from it. And that's great, because together with Conte, you win. And he proved it already, especially on national territorium, because Europe is something else. And that's why Conte is really an additional value and an added value for every single club, because it will make the club better. Whatever happens, he's a workaholic. He's working. He's obsessed in going 100%. The problem is that from the moment he's not happy anymore, he has no emotions about that. He's leaving. And he can go to, what's your biggest rival? Is it Arsenal?
It's Arsenal.
He can go to Arsenal without, after 10 years of Tottenham, he can go to Arsenal from one day to another without any problem. And he will go to Arsenal, he will kiss the badge if he needs to. He doesn't care.
Wow. Yeah, look, those kind of negatives are reminding me a little bit of Jose Mourinho. But look, I suppose we have the added value that Conte is in his prime at the moment, and he has been probably since 2011. But it's good to have those kind of know what we could end up having. So I do appreciate that insight as well. But
I see Jack Kineke saying Conte's affection is winning. It's true. It's true. It's correct.
Yeah. What is it? Something like 5 league titles in his 7 full years of management. If he can get anywhere near that at Tottenham, we'd be absolutely delighted. But look, you mentioned the word workaholic there a second ago, and I feel like that's the perfect time to move on a little bit to Fabio Paratici, who of course came in as Tottenham sporting director in June, I believe, after 11 years at Juventus. Look, massive success, I suppose, is the main way you can look at Paratici there. But I want to touch on his transfers a little bit, because it's probably the key role he had at Juventus, and it's certainly going forward the key role he's going to have at Tottenham. He spoke at his press conference when he was leaving Juventus, and he wanted to name his best transfer at the club. And he said one that I think everyone was expecting, Cristiano Ronaldo, that incredible transfer a few years back. He said Andrea Berzagli, who he signed from Wolfsburg for €300,000 in 2011. That says a lot about the man, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I have defended Paratici so much because I enjoy it, and I believe that he's a scout that probably is impaired. He's really great in understanding talents, going and knowing who are the players that he has to buy. Barzagli wanted to stop his career of football. He wanted to retire at the age of 30. They bought him in January, the year before we started winning. So it was one of the first signings of Paratici. They bought him for nothing, €300,000. It's really nothing, and he became a legend, a really club legend. So Barzagli is really a top transfer, but the list is really long of everything he did well at Juve. We have so many names. I don't know if you want me to mention them or not, but Paratici is a guy that understands football as nobody, can detect young talents, but also some talents that apparently are finished and can give them another chance. He's working day and night, 24/7. He's going for it, 100%. Available guy, but it has always been a guy that loved to work in the shadow, without his name being too much mentioned. He didn't like too much to go on camera. That's why I was super surprised when I saw the Twitch channel of Tottenham, and suddenly I saw Paratici there. I said, like, what is going on? I would never expected that. But it's crazy that he stepped up also, and he became better on that one. But if you see players like Barzagli, but also Coman, Kingsley Coman, that came from Paris Saint-Germain for €0. We're not forgetting Pogba, masterclass from €0 from Manchester United. When he came the first day and he trained, we had a Pirlo speaking with other teammates, and they were laughing. They said, how is it possible that Manchester United, they gave it for free? And Buffon was laughing, and he was not believing it. And he asked, how much did we pay for him? And he said, for free. So, they were really laughing because they were the scouting work was phenomenal. But also Paulo Dybala, a big promise, came from Palermo after a big year of Palermo. 40 million at the time was a lot of money. They believed in him. We are speaking about McKennie. McKennie, unknown to the big public. Now, McKennie is not the best player of the world, but last year he surprised a lot of people because he already knew him. We are speaking about Pirlo, of course, Ronaldo, De Ligt, Higuain. He did a lot of things and great things at Juventus, really.
Yeah, and it's interesting you mentioned McKennie because he's one of the transfers I actually had listed down here in front of me, and it's I had Fabrizio Romano on the channel a couple of months ago, and we were speaking about Paratici and what he's kind of his style among certain things. And the day that we spoke about this, Romano he brought up Wesley McKennie, and he said Paratici may negotiate with 5-6 different players to try and find the best deal for any of them, but at the same time he might be trying to get something done on the sly. And that's what happened with Wesley McKennie. It was within 24 hours the rumors started circulating, then all of a sudden he was holding up the jersey. Yeah. And the very interesting thing for me is the day after Romano told me that, all of a sudden we signed Brian Gill from absolutely nowhere, and it was just such perfect timing on that. Of course, Barzagli and Ronaldo noted down there as well. But on your point about how he can recognize these young players, I was reading an article earlier today preparing for this, and one of the points they made was that as a footballer, Paratici never really made it at any good level. He was kind of leveled out around the third division of Italian football, and that is where he picked up that knack of being able to recognize this talent in smaller leagues like that. And Francesco Porzio, another Italian journalist, was on Romano's Twitch channel a few months ago, and he told the story of Paratici having dinner alone in some Italian restaurant a few years back, and he was doodling on a piece of tissue or something. And after he left the restaurant, he left the tissue behind him, and he had listed out some names on the thing. Now I don't have all of the names, but this is way back when the players I'm about to mention were playing in the lower Italian leagues or lesser leagues. Dominic Szoboszlai, Nicolo Zaniolo, Sandro Tonali, and I have another name that's there. I've written down MD and I forget who that is, but there's three incredible young players there, and it's so fantastic to see that he has that eye for talent in leagues that other people may not even think to look at. But go ahead.
It's funny because that paper, it was how do you say, in some pieces, cut in pieces. Scratching pieces. It was left there, and probably the restaurant owner, I don't know, put it together, and we were able to see a lot of players divided in different columns and so on. And it was up front of his game, and we never knew if it was a real story or not or whatever. But then he kind of confirmed with a joke the day that he left Juventus, his last press conference. With a joke, he kind of confirmed that it was a true list. So it was not a fake story; it's a real list.
That's brilliant. I've just looked up there. The MD I have is Mary Demiral, who of course ended up at Juventus, and I'll say was a big part of Tottenham signing Christian Romero this summer and him moving on to Atalanta as well. But incredible eye for talent that Paratici has. Look, it hasn't always gone to plan with his transfers, and with the sheer amount of transfers he's brought in and the success he's had with a lot of transfers, you can allow a few negative ones in there. One that I've noted down is Aaron Ramsey, who I believe was brought in for free, which seemed like a very good deal, but then you find out he's on €350,000 a week. What do you make, I suppose, of the Ramsey transfer and maybe some other slightly negative ones for Paratici?
I praise Paratici a lot, and I believe that I think it's quite obvious that I really appreciate Paratici. I wish him the best, and for me, he's a really top. The problem is that at a certain moment we signed Ronaldo. Marotta left, and that's why I told you we went to buy Marotta and Paratici. Mm-hmm. We changed the structure where Paratici became really a number one. And I think that was too much for him. Too much for him, especially at the time, together with maybe, I don't know, how can I say, a sense of omnipotence, because you brought in Cristiano Ronaldo out of nowhere, where you invested so many money in terms of salary for Cristiano Ronaldo, but the year before or 2 years before you bought Higuain, and he didn't pay attention to the financial side. So I think that he can grow still in terms of balancing the finance, being a number one. And that was where Marotta was really good at, in stopping and saying no. By the way, we forgot an important name that he found out. Arturo Vidal. Paratici found the guy. 10 million euro from Bayern Leverkusen, I believe. Nobody knew the player. What a fantastic player. But you see, being him number one and handling media, being exposed to media, putting himself in front of the camera, the finances, not being the number one that was able to go and follow all the players like he always did, but he had to trust some people. I think it was a bit too much for him suddenly. And that's where I think it started also to compensate, looking for the free transfer market. And then he brings us where Juventus was never able to replace a Pirlo, Marchisio, Vidal, and Pogba. Never. He brings us Rabiot and Aaron Ramsey in the same transfer market for, yes, free market. But on the other hand, big wages. And that's a really, really big problem because, you know, both of them were big guess and bets. You know what I mean? Aaron Ramsey, you go on transfer market, you go to the history of injuries, and you know that if you want to bring him for 2 million euro salary per year, 3.5, 4 million euro, why not? But if you put him in your top 3 more paid players, you have a problem. Because the player is not consistent. He's always, and I'm sure he's a great player in terms of qualities, but it's the 3rd year and we are not able to see it. So it's a big problem that Ramsey could not be the one that would solve the midfield problems of Juventus. Could have been a great, you know, when you have like 6 possible shots, 5 you secure them, and the 6th one you bet. Ramsey could have been the 6th bet, but could not be your first one where you have to show that you will hit. Can't be. And especially if next to him, you take an Adrien Rabiot that didn't play for 6 months at Paris Saint-Germain because he has troubles with the club. He didn't want to play anymore. And he needed like 1 year to come back at physical condition. These are big problems. Another one is McKennie. I praised the scout of McKennie. But he did a big mistake because your number 1 target at the time was Luis Suarez. But you forgot the rules in Italy, and by buying a McKennie that was American, you had no free slots anymore for non-European players, and you were actually you didn't buy Suarez. You know, and I believe that at a certain moment when you are at that top level, you have to think about it, especially if you see the season that Luis Suarez did last year with Atletico Madrid. Personally, I love McKennie. I'm convinced about his potential. But if you told me last year, who do you choose between Suarez and McKennie? I think there was no doubt. So he did some mistakes. Huh?
Yeah, no, again, that's probably something Tottenham fans do need to be wary of because Paratici is probably your number 1 right now. And you mentioned him not being on camera. You know, he does these interviews and he was on the bench for our first 5-6 games of the season. And we have these the clips that the Tottenham YouTube does where they have a manager cam. So we see like the camera's on Nuno for the full game, or now it's on Conte for the full game. And Paratici was kind of taking the limelight a little bit when he was there in the background, and he was this passionate man. He was standing up, he was shouting, almost being an Antonio Conte on the sideline. So I wonder, is that something he's trying to change as he does become more of that number 1, maybe going into that different role? Perhaps some things he may have seen Marotta do.
Is he still doing it? Because I saw the clips on Twitter and so on of Paratici, and I know that the Premier League fans, or especially Tottenham fans, they were not used to it and they didn't like it. There was a lot of criticism about him shouting and not being calm there. Quite. Is he still doing it or not?
He actually isn't, which is interesting. It was towards the last couple of games of Nuno's time, which might have been a good thing. We wanted to see him as angry as he apparently was in the stands on the side of the pitch. But it was very different. And I think what Tottenham fans didn't like is our chief scout that we have at the club for years, Steve Hitchen. We rarely see him. Like, one of the first things I ever heard him say was in our Amazon documentary, our chief scout, and he said, "I hate the transfer window." That's kind of what we know about him. And then all of a sudden he's on the sideline with Paratici, almost shadowing this man that has been so successful at Juventus and come in. But look, Giuseppe, this has been an incredible chat. I can honestly say this is one of my favorite ever streams that I've done on this channel. We've learned so much about Conte, about Paratici, and about Juventus as well that I didn't know. Some very interesting stories. So I really do want to say thank you so much for your time here and for coming on. Do you want to let everyone know where they can find you on social media, on Twitter or on YouTube?
I made it really easy for people to find me because I always use the same name, G from Giuseppe, and then just Juve. So guys, if you want to follow me, I don't know, on YouTube, I have a channel, of course. So YouTube or Instagram, Twitter, whatever you want to. Of course, as it's mentioned in my name, it's just Juve. So I speak 99.9% about Juventus, but you know, sometimes I speak about Tottenham if we are playing versus Tottenham. But if you want to, would be a real pleasure if you hit also the subscribe button on the channel, like I'm doing too, Matt, because I'm a big fan of your work, Matt. I wanted to see it also on your channel. I told you privately, but you are doing a great work. I'm really happy because you're just good. Especially when you are going and you are listening to your fans, to your audience, you are listening, you're reading, you're answering them. And we were speaking about workaholic, but I don't know you privately, but what you did with your channel in such a short time, and especially I saw that you won a trophy, or you were silver, I think. Mm-hmm. Congratulations, so buddy.
Thank you very much. I really do massively appreciate that. Everyone, look, if you click G Just Juve in the title, it'll bring you straight to Giuseppe's channel, and you can go over and subscribe there. If you head over to my Twitter, I'll have posts out tagging him if you want to go over and follow him on Twitter as well. I highly, highly recommend it. Thank you to everyone for tuning in. Thank you, everyone, for your kind words as well. Yep.
Can I just 1 second, because there was Wira Sly, or Wyra Sly, I don't know how to pronounce it, that said, I just wondering if the pandemic affect Paratici's plan. Yes, absolutely. 100%. I think it's a really great one because the last year were a consequence of pandemic, a consequence also of Ronaldo. That was a plan that was super well built, but due to COVID didn't work well out and affected a lot, because a lot of people are saying no, but Juventus didn't build the team around Ronaldo, but it's not true, because the first year after he's leaving, we buy a Matthijs de Ligt. So Paul Pogba, like Fabrizio Romano was saying, was about to sign for Juve before the pandemic. So the plans were there, but they were smashed away. And that's why I'm super happy and confident that and Paratici and Conte, they will be a magic duo for Tottenham. They will do great things.
I love that. As Romano called it, the Italian revolution at Tottenham is well and truly underway. We've learned so much about the two men in charge of that. Again, thank you so much for your time tonight. Everyone who is, if you are still here, it's still 200 people in the live chat, please do smash that like button. It really helps us out in pushing this video out to more and more people. And like I said, we're on the road to 2 million views, which hopefully we'll hit over the next day or two. So please do share out this stream on your favorite social media platforms, and let's hit that mark together. And I do have something planned for that as well when we hit that milestone that I'm sure you won't want to miss. But for now, for myself and from Giuseppe, as always, thank you so much for watching.